everyone. Welcome back to HLS TV. I'm Molly Moran here with Ryan Ritter, and we're just going to jump right into this because it's not going to be one of our more fun episodes, but it will be a good one nonetheless. So we played Arizona State yesterday afternoon. I can't, whatever. See, I'm already all over the place.
It all blurs together at this point. I mean,
It does blur together. I'm like, what day is it? It feels like a year ago. But yes, we did not win that one. So how do you feel about it, Ryan? What are some of your general thoughts?
Yeah, first thought, and I want to make clear because I did have a post in HLS, and it was more of I said Notre Dame is not a playoff caliber team, and that's just fine. And the main reason behind that post was because I understand and I'm upset about the loss. I'm really frustrated. If you look at Brian Kelly's press conference, he was incredibly frustrated. I mean, jumped down Prister's throat at one point, but he said later, it's like, this has nothing to do with you. It's, I hate, I'm upset about this. I don't want to hear my team being called, playing flat, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, the thing is I feel like, I was upset, but I wasn't mad. And I want to differentiate them. The reason why I'm not, completely mad is because that game was a dose of reality of where we're at. And it's part of the reason why I've been saying for some time, when we're talking about the playoff rankings, try not to be upset because we still got business to do before we start making a huge debate about where we are. Now, yes, I mean, we had 5 turnovers. You can't do that. But we've done it before and won. So I think we kind of had maybe this fake comfort zone, and we almost had it again. We started making a comeback. But, it was really a dose of reality that a good team can beat us. And, maybe we're just not there yet. And that's not the worst thing in the world. It's upsetting. It's frustrating, yes. And I don't want to pretend that, you should feel the way I feel, but that's the way I feel, is that it was just a dose of reality of where we're going. And I'm just kind of moving on from there. How do you feel about it?
No, I agree. I think it's hard because I think it's easy to you just feel extremes. Like your feelings come in an extreme at first. I think during the game you're extremely happy. We're making a comeback. You can't even think of the possibility that we're going to lose. We're within 3, so you could tell by Twitter and just anything, just even your own feelings. I'm sure if you're listening, you had similar ones. You're just like, all right, we got this now. You just kind of start to think one way or the other. So yes, after the game, I think I was extremely upset, and then it really quickly started to temper down. Though I was really kind of surprised at myself, like how well I took it. And I think that's just because I feel the same way. Like, yes, we lost. It was extremely frustrating because I think we can all agree that that was a game we totally could have won. We shot our own selves in the foot multiple times, so it was really frustrating to watch. But in the grand scheme of things, I am really kind of excited with where the team is. And I know sometimes I can kind of seem a little bit delusional, and I get it, but it's just like your feelings just have to cycle, and I think it just takes some people a little bit longer is all. But I think if we're all being honest with ourselves, this probably wasn't a playoff caliber team this year. And like you said, that's okay. I'm really excited with where we are, and I'm excited with where we're going to go. So I think it's just kind of being able to reconcile those feelings of, yes, you can be frustrated, but you should probably also be able to be positive too, and that's okay. You just have to kind of, again, marry those two things together.
Right, and if you have big expectations that this team should have gone to the playoffs, that's not a bad thing.
No.
And the thing that we really have to keep in mind is that it's pretty nice that this is the trajectory of where the program's going, that was a realistic expectation.
Yeah, exactly.
Even though we're probably where most people thought we were at, a 10-2 potential maybe was best case for most people preseason, it's not wrong to expect a playoff. Having the elevated expectations is fine. Being upset that we missed them is fine. Everybody, deals with things in a different fashion. I tend to, and it's just the way I am. I know I'm more overly optimistic when it comes to Notre Dame, I think, than most people. But I also think that has to do with, you got to realize when I went to school and really my Notre Dame fandom started, it started with Ty Willingham. We were coming off.
You can only go up from there, right?
Yeah, I mean, we were coming off, when I went into Notre Dame was in 2003, so we came off the return to glory, and it ended up being a farce. So when Weiss came on board, and this is when I actually started working with the football team, man, I just saw this huge change, and I was just so excited. And, because of that, and because Weiss had such a drastic turn after I left in 2007, I guess I got in the habit of trying to look for, I guess the silver lining, maybe more than I should. But when I see what Brian Kelly's doing and I see the clear upward trend, I try to temper it because I remember what those dark times were like. So,
Mhm.
and I really think that's that's the biggest thing is I remember how much it used to suck. So it's not like, oh yeah, well the losses are fine. I'm moving the bar low. It's more that
Right.
I guess now as I go on because we've dug out of that valley. I'm happy that hopefully we won't be returning to there anytime soon. So, and I know this season we
Yeah.
won't be, and I think there's plenty of concerns, and we're definitely going to get into those because this game threw up a lot of red flags. But yeah, I mean, if you're, I mean, playoff or bust is not a bad mindset to have. I guarantee you, Kelly had
No.
that mindset. Everybody on the
Exactly.
team had that mindset. So, hey, I mean, this sucks, but I'm moving on to reality. I want to get a big bowl because the one thing I want to remove this season is the Notre Dame can't beat anybody thing. And right now, it's hard to deny that knock because unless Stanford sneaks back into the top 25 at the end of the season, maybe Louisville, who knows,
Mhm.
we won't have that top 25 win. And I want that top 25 win. So even if it's in a bowl
Yeah,
game,
I think we can all agree.
yeah, I want it, and I hate that I'm saying it's for next year's building next year, but I think it's just as important for this year, just to kind of have that
Hmm.
palate cleanser. I mean, heck, I mean, just think about it. If we get into a bowl game against, say, an SEC West team, and I made the joke at one point when both our and in the first half when both Auburn and Notre Dame were getting their tails kicked, I said, let's meet in the Cotton Bowl for the overrated bowl, tongue in cheek, but also kind of, we would get respect if we won that game, so I'd be all for it.
True.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm rambling. I know it's just frustrating.
It's okay. I will too. It's just a lot of stuff to get off our chest. That's all.
Right, yeah, and more than in 140 character chunks.
Yeah, when you have more than 140 characters to work with, you kind of run with it. So, continuing with that, I guess we can kind of start to more more precisely analyze the game, perhaps, or more intelligently. Not that this wasn't intelligent, but more organized, perhaps, is a better word.
Slightly more organized. Let's be honest. We
More organized.
we go all over the. We're actually running without a show outline today, so I just said let's run
Yeah,
with it. We're just gonna run with it.
we are. We're just running with it. I think the main thing that probably anyone would point to when they think of this game is Everett Golson and his turnovers. So that's probably the first thing we should discuss.
Yeah, that's pretty glaring. There's two things I want to point out in regards to Everett's turnovers. One, yes, frustrating, concerning, obviously, uh,
Hmm.
but we also need to tip our hat to Arizona State because had Notre Dame's defense done to Taylor Kelly what Arizona State did to Everett Golson, we would be, ranting and raving about how great our defense did because the fact of the matter is that, and ESPN actually had a graphic of this a couple different times last night, that all 5 turnovers were caused by the blitz and showed the comparison between blitz and no blitz, and I mean night and day. I mean it just was not even close.
Hmm.
And really, a lot of those interceptions were tipped, one by Corey Robinson at the tail end, but the ones in the first half that really cost us tipped at the line. And, Everett trying to stay up. He fumbled twice, only one was lost, and both times it was because he's trying to escape pressure because he drops back, and as soon as he drops back, he's already running for dear life. And both
Hmm.
times he actually shucked the defender, and, the fumble was, he literally put the ball on the ground. Now, had he fallen, like on his forearm, is all he would have had to do was just fall on his forearm. That's not a fumble. But because he put his other hand on the ground, tried to stay up, and then used the hand with the football to try to stay up, they count that as a hand. So fumble. And on that play in particular, if you go back and look at it, watch Koyak because that I don't want to completely dog him because everybody shares blame in this. But on
Hmm.
that play in particular, man, he just looked like I got beat, and he's standing looking around, doesn't even realize the ball is fumbled. So we need to
Yeah,
realize there's a lot of different moving parts here. Now, this does not absolve Everett, obviously,
exactly.
but it's
Yeah.
something that we need to consider about it as far as where these turnovers came. The one I will really say that was absolutely horrible, terrible, and literally, well, it didn't kill everything because we still made a run at it afterwards, but it was the interception in the end zone. coming
Mm,
back in the second half. That is the one where it's absolutely killer. I don't know if there was a miscommunication or he forced it or what it was. Either way, he would have been better off just falling down.
yeah.
So, I mean, how do you feel about, interceptions? Anything that particularly stood out to you?
Um, well, I will say this will go with the interception thing and kind of in general because, like we said, we don't really have a total outline for this talk. But I was going to say during the last episode, I had said like I wasn't really worried about this game. I was really convinced that Everett Golson, kind of had found his groove. But I did say that he was going to be a big factor in that the big cliche that people like to use, the team that made the least amount of mistakes. And I couldn't watch the beginning of the game. I had to listen to it, and when I was listening to it on the radio on the drive home from a party I had to do, I was just like, oh no, I'm like some sort of jinx. I talked about this and it's happening. And I was like, we were like I just think of that as like the digging the hole section of the game because I listened to the first about almost the first half. We dug a huge hole for ourselves, and then I had to go to church. And I came back, and when I came back from church, literally walked in from the garage into the basement. My dad had come back inside and was actually watching the game again and scored a touchdown. No joke, walked inside, scored a touchdown, and I was like, oh my gosh, maybe my bargain with God to like work at the homeless shelter is actually paying off. But so bringing this all back to the interception thing, to me it was just like one, either I'm a jinx, or two, no kidding, I just yes, kind of thought that yes, one, Everett kind of made some not so smart decisions, but two, I agree with you that sometimes I think it's easy to kind of think, okay, well, he's the quarterback, he's the one in control of the ball, so you kind of want to pin everything on him. But this is a team game. Me and all these cliches today, but no, it's true. Like you said, there's a lot of moving parts. You can't just say this is all on Everett. Most of it, yes, but I agree that when I kind of went back, I'm not rewatching that game. You can't make me. But when I went back and kind of thought about some of the plays, I was like, when you're like, oh, if you want to go back and rewatch and watch Ben Quick, no, I won't be doing that. But no, I agree that when you go back and kind of think of some of the, you think of the isolated plays and when the turnovers occurred, that there was a lot. It's not just one suspect in those occasions, and so I just think it did. I think it, as you alluded to earlier, kind of just brought to light some of the weaknesses that this team has, and that's not a bad thing. It was bound to happen. I just think during the Arizona State game, a lot of our weaknesses got exploited like all at once and all in a row. But it's gonna happen.
Yeah, and that's probably the more disappointing part, and especially with the O-line, because when you go back to Florida State, that was, despite everything that happened, that was the real big takeaway, was we beat their ass in the trenches both ways.
Right.
And now all of a sudden we go rolling into the desert, and I know there's a lot of different factors in that. The defense is dog tired because they're on the field, because we turn the ball over, and you got your 30-second rest and maybe a TV time.
Exactly.
So you're now on the first few drives. I mean, this is ridiculous. So Arizona State, their first drive, started they got the ball first, and they started at the 9-yard line. Then Notre Dame gets a field goal. They have the Everett fumble. Well, they get the ball on their 25, so I mean it's normal. So now you're like, okay, yeah, back and forth, and this is why I thought it was going to be under 30 points, because had the game continued like that and normal field position be followed, I didn't think either team would get over 30. However, then we have a fumble. All of a sudden, they're starting on the Notre Dame 13. Interception. Yep. They're starting on the Notre Dame 23. And those are within the start time of both those drives is 3:25 and 3:13. So it's within a matter of seconds. They're right back out there again, and you're pinned behind the wall, so you're not helping yourself out. And then, at that point, yes, it becomes a shootout. And there was other things in there as well that was, we had trouble running the ball in the interior. And on the other side, they had no problem running up the interior on us for most of the game. And like I said, I know some of that is defense dog tired. Maybe it's also because who knows, I have to go back and watch a little bit more to see how Niles was trying to fill his gaps. But
give yourself a few weeks, but yeah.
Jalen Smith, Niles had a rough game in some patches. Jalen Smith did not have a very good game either, and he's by far one of my favorites on the team.
Right.
the line didn't have as good of a game, and the offensive line that we have been praising for a while just looked terrible.
See, and I
So,
think that's the big thing. I think the word that comes to mind for me with a really good championship caliber team is consistency. And I
right,
think this game just kind of, it was just like, okay, we can't play at this consistent of a level each and every week. And that's not, it's a bad thing obviously for us right now, but that's not a bad thing in the long run because it's things that can be fixed. It was just definitely disappointing to see. So it was like, what are you guys doing? Because like you said, we've been praising these different positions week after week, or in certain games, and it was just like, what is happening now? They did not look themselves.
right. And it was weird because and that's why I'm trying to figure out kind of where things went wrong. Was it an emotional thing to where,
Yeah.
and that's why people throw the flat around, because on the first drive we moved the ball just fine, and they bend but didn't break on our first field goal,
Hmm.
much of the same way when we gave up the first field goal to them. It was just like things changed, and I know in the third quarter we made a valiant comeback effort. The defense, picked it up. They played
Yes.
they played better. The offense played much better, and who knows what would have happened if, and we have another mistake that we haven't even talked about, if, poor Hunter Smith, whatever happened there, Brian Kelly was not talking to him, oddly enough. He was talking to our long snapper. So I don't
Hmm.
know if he jumped the gun early on the snap or what,
Yeah.
because that basically hit Hunter in the face.
I forgot that even happened. That's
Yeah,
so weird. It's that whole defense mechanism thing. I was like, oh yeah.
exactly. Yeah, I mean, it was just
I want
another
to
one
think
of those.
about
Yeah, one of those cases to where when that enters, we were within 3 points at
it.
one point
Right.
in the game, and if that field goal had been made, game's tied. So,
Yeah,
but
and see that's the frustrating thing because I'm sitting here talking about consistency. Yeah, we weren't consistent, but we did it. We came within three, and I don't even know what happened that we lost. Well, I know what happened, but I'm just sitting there like, how is this? How is this happening? I was just watching in dread. Like we were within three.
right, yeah, but the one thing to consider is that when things did get closer, Arizona
Mhm.
State came right back and almost like, yeah, that's
Exactly. It's
because
not
we
like they
played
stood
prevent.
still.
Right,
Right.
and at the very end, I mean, they put on the gas,
They
and
did.
they did what we actually, a lot of people, myself included, said was something wrong with Navy. While I was happy we won by 10, we did point out last week there were many opportunities where we could have stomped on their throat. Arizona State got that opportunity with us, and they
And
stomped on our
they
throat.
did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's why they put a 50 points,
Right. And
and
I
it's
don't. Yeah, I don't blame them.
yeah, and it's not a run up the score thing. It's, stop us. We're trying to make a statement in a playoff elimination game to the committee.
Exactly. And a
So
new system that we still are trying to figure out how it works. So I don't blame them for making it a little bit more of a signature win there.
exactly. And one thing you have to consider is who knows who's going to have to compare the Notre Dame thing. Is Florida State and Arizona State going to become a comparison at some point?
Hmm.
They already, and that's one thing people got to consider is that before the committee came in, they said, Arizona State beat Stanford better than Notre Dame beat Stanford. So that was a tiebreaker. So if
Hmm.
you have that in mind, maybe margin of victory is not a factor, but the playoff committee has already admitted they took a look at it at one point. So
Hmm.
if they're going to take a look at it again, for whatever reason it is, whether it's a Florida State comparison or maybe they say, here's two top 25 wins. Which top 25 win was more impressive? Was it the Notre Dame win or was it, team against, insert SEC West team in here?
Right.
So I don't have a problem with doing what they did at all at the very end of it. So, just to throw that out there. I think most people are on that page as well because
Hmm.
there's too many other things to be worried about, honestly,
Exactly.
beyond the
I didn't
50
even care what
plus.
Arizona State was doing by the end of it. I was just watching Notre Dame self-destruct.
Yeah, and that's really a good term with it. And I honestly have not seen Kelly so mad at a presser before because, it was, one of the USA Today writers, I forget who it was off the top of my head, put up a clickbait headline like, frustration with Golson boils over. And that's not really what it was. It was just Kelly
No.
like, you know, everything that he said, we didn't see anything new. Arizona State did the same thing they did against us last year. It's just this year we fell apart.
Right.
And there was really no other, and he even said it was maddening, and he said maddening about I think 20 different times in the
Right.
presser, and I know that's exactly how a lot of Irish fans
I
feel.
was gonna, yeah, I've really kind of liked the way he felt after the presser because I think we could all relate to it, and I liked, he wasn't taking, like, oh, well, we tried this, we did that. No, he was mad, and he had every right to be, and I kind of liked seeing that in a coach. Like, you want to see that. He had every right to be frustrated with his team, and I was like, you know what? Good for you. get the boys back where they need to be, get them on the same page. And I mean, everything he said was valid. And like you said, I think we could all relate to it. So I liked how he felt after that game because it made me feel like, okay, we can all feel that way. And now we can like move on as the week goes on.
Right, and even a part of that, even though he was upset with how the team played, he still went to bat for his team, and
he did exactly.
and yeah, it was with Prister particularly with the flat comment, and I do like that Kelly came back around and apologized more or less to him and said, "Look, I just don't like hearing that term when that's not what happened," because he flat out was like, "Did you watch the game? Did you watch the first drive? Were we flat then? Are you out of your mind?"
Right. But it's like one of those things too, like where he can like say what he wants about his team, but if anybody else is gonna say it, like you can't. You know what I mean? Like he can be upset with them, but I like that when someone else kind of tries to make a comment, he's like, "Whoa, wait a second, no." So he does. He's a good healthy balance.
Yeah, so I did like that. The fact that he's as upset as we all were about the game and how maddening all the turnovers were, but it was like this team still put in an effort, and they fought. You don't make nearly would have been the biggest comeback in school history had they pulled it off, and they damn near did it.
They did, exactly. I mean, I was honestly, like, that's what I looked to in that game. We ended up losing it, and I don't care if it makes me, like, some delusionally, positive fan. I think it's true. Like, we came back, and I think that's huge. I think that speaks a lot to the team. Like, yes, we still ended up losing, but that, to me, I was proud, because I think that means that we are a Notre Dame team that's at least competitive, and in years past, we haven't even been that. So I'm happy with that.
Right, yeah. I mean, you can take silver linings out of there, but one thing I do like is, Kelly said back to his conference that we're not taking that silver lining, and they shouldn't.
Exactly.
It helps us as fans, and it's a coping mechanism. Like,
right, exactly. As a fan, I want the coping mechanism, but yeah, I can totally understand. Like, if I was on the team, I wouldn't be happy with that, because if I was on the team, I'd want more from myself and from my teammates, and as a coach, you should want that too. I just needed to sleep easy at night. That's all.
Yeah, exactly. And they're not going to have this week in practice.
I can't even imagine.
It's going to be rough for those guys. So I can only imagine the kind of it's a good thing Northwestern is coming in, because of all teams I think we faced, they might be one of the worst outside of, I don't know, Michigan or something like that. Can we still make digs at Michigan just to make ourselves feel better?
Yeah.
But yeah, and the other thing I want to point out too, because I know there's a lot of why is Golson still in there? And as Brian Kelly said, it's simple. He gives us the best chance to win, and he's been asked multiple times throughout the season, have you ever thought about putting Zaire in? There was one press conference, I think it was maybe pre-Navy or something. I forget what it was, but that question was asked, and he laughed like, no, I didn't think about subbing Golson out, or maybe it was even further. Maybe it was like after Syracuse or something like that. So I think that's clear, and he said that again. It's like, look, I didn't think that for a second. Golson's our guy, and really, and there are things to be worried about. Let's be real clear on Golson, because a lot of people were throwing around as like, he has more turnovers than Tommy Rees, which is completely true, completely valid. But in the same, the other side of the coin you need to look at is that already at this point in the season, he has more total touchdowns than Tommy Rees did last season, which was Tommy's best year, and a year he cut turnovers down last year, but still had the problem. So the thing is, Golson is right now a big risk reward quarterback, and the fact is that if Zaire was ready to run in, I completely have confidence in Kelly that he would roll Zaire in there.
Exactly. Yeah, I was gonna say, we don't see them every day in practice like they do, so I have every confidence that he knows what he's doing and he knows who should be played.
Yes, and if Kelly's not rolling him in there, I actually thought at this point this season we might see, not necessarily a two-quarterback system, but some packages. And I said
to bring him in for isolated situations, or
to where maybe we have a read up, because that's one of Zaire's best strengths is doing that zone read option. He's very, very good at that. It's one of Golson's weaker parts. So I thought that maybe be where we would see that. That hasn't happened, which tells me that that's not what Kelly is comfortable with, so there's probably a reason for that. And the backup quarterback is always the most popular person on the roster.
Exactly.
And it's not just Notre Dame fans, Dallas Cowboy fans today. Cowboys won the game, but because of Romo's hurt back, I kid you not, I'm driving home listening to a post-game show, and there's a caller upset they didn't draft Johnny Manziel. I mean, this guy's not even on the roster, and there's still Cowboy fans wanting him in for the same reason, because you think it's going to solve a problem. And I understand why that thought is there, and
Mhm.
the reason we had it, when Tommy Reeves was in there is because we knew Golson had better physical tools. But even
Exactly.
but even then, even though we're like, oh man, we should maybe burn the red shirt, Kelly's like, no, not ready. And even the first year he did play, there was still some evidence where Kelly said, no, you're not ready. You're getting benched, and I'm bringing Tommy in because you're going down a path that we simply can't keep going down. And, Michigan
Mhm.
in 2012 is a perfect example. So
Yeah.
Golson's still learning, which we got to hope. And in the offseason, there's definitely going to be a competition. I have no doubt about that. But as of right now, it's clear that that's where Kelly believes Zaire is at and where Golson is at, and I'm rolling with him on that. And if it keeps going down this, Kelly has a moment where it's like, you know what? To hell with it. You're playing so bad right now. I'm rolling Zaire out there.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is, despite all the turnovers, we made that comeback in large part because of Everett Golson. So
I
it's give and take. I know he has more turnovers than some teams right now in general. So it's frustrating. I understand being frustrated with Golson, but hey, if he's the best chance to win, we're gonna have to
Yeah,
live with
you
it.
have a plan.
Yeah.
Yep. I agree. Yeah, and I mean, with the I saw some of the stats or comparisons between his amount of turnovers and Tommy Reese's and things like that. There's like a fuzz. There we go. Things like that. I just think like sometimes numbers are like they can be deceiving because you also have to consider like you'd almost need a breakdown of like what every turnover was because there was turnovers that Tommy Reese had a million years to throw and he just made a completely bad read, like versus Ever Golson having to run for his life and having a turnover. So like that's the other thing too. Seems like when people bring up these numbers, I'm just like, okay, we get it, but there's also it's different situations that they happened in. So
Yeah, for
I
for
would,
me, the fumbles are the bigger thing for Golson, and he's
right.
reduced the ones where he's scrambling. He's gotten a lot smarter. He's running out of bounds. He's getting on the
Yes.
ground, and this was one game to where, really, for the first time, to where he just did not seem to have the pocket presence he usually does in trying to escape.
Definitely seemed off at the beginning, especially.
Right. A lot of that had to do with Arizona State causing havoc, but
Yeah.
he was also trying to do too much. And there's some times where a sack is much better than,
Hmm.
what's your best case scenario here? Maybe you get 2 yards. Sometimes taking the loss is not that big of a deal, which, and I know that's one thing. It's like, well, Tommy didn't fumble last year. Well, yeah, he didn't fumble, but he's also not running around. So again, you have.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. You have to consider those things.
All right, but one thing that I do think is a positive in this, with people taking a look back to Tommy Rees, is people I think now having appreciation that it's not one quarterback fixes all, because not everybody is going to be this otherworldly Heisman type stud that barely turns the football over. That is very, very hard to come by.
Hmm. No, I think that the Notre Dame quarterback is almost like it's like the presidency in terms of when you have the new one, you can kind of look back and like appreciate the old one
Right.
eventually. Oh, okay. Like, all right, that wasn't so bad, but at the expense sometimes of this one. But Notre Dame fans, I think, we love our team and we want them to be the best they can be. And sometimes, we get just a little over passionate. Sometimes there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's basically what happened with this game and understandable frustrations.
Right, and when it comes to a backup quarterback, it seems like such a quick fix. It's like this. It's
Exactly.
almost
Just
like
put him in, it'll be better. No.
that's like, okay, if you're thinking like a car, it's like, wait, this part's broken. This part's not working right. Take it out of there, put a new one in.
Right,
Maybe that part's
right.
defunct too, but if you
Exactly, and that's just oversimplifying the problem. Because if the only problem was at the quarterback position, then he would have put him in. But there was so many other things going on during that game, and even if it was the quarterback position, which it was in certain cases,
yeah.
Zaire still may not have been ready. And he can't do the things that Golson does. They have a very different skill set, and that might not be what we needed at that time. Or I like you said, trust that Kelly knows what he's doing, and Zaire just wasn't ready.
Yeah, and I think that's another thing we need to point out, because there are some situations, and I'm thinking off the top of my head, like Brady Quinn coming in for Carlisle Holiday.
Hmm.
There's another factor there. Crappy coach, Ty Willingham. When Jimmy Clausen, when he came in very quickly in the 2007 season, after I think Demetrius Jones and Nate Montana, I think, fell on their face in the first game of
Yeah.
season.
Yep.
You know, again, maybe Weiss, I think, wanted to redshirt him. And if you look back on that season, man, Jimmy had a hell of a time. He was getting his butt handed to him, and he turned into one of the most accurate passers in Notre Dame history. You know, Brady Quinn struggled, you know, first coming out.
Hmm.
One thing, it is so rare that you get a redshirt freshman that plays like Jameis Winston, that plays like Johnny Manziel, to where they
Right.
just
That's like,
play
yeah.
out of their minds and are just, you know, and they win Heisman's because they played so freaking well. That is
Hmm.
so rare, and I know we want that for Notre Dame. So it's hard not to make that apples to apples comparison, even though they're apples to oranges, because you're like,
Hmm.
wait, you know, Texas A&M did it, and they haven't
Yeah.
been that good in a while. Florida State is just now good, and it's because of Jameis Winston. How, you know, why can't we hit the quarterback jackpot? So
Right. And the
every
thing is, I think we have to an extent, just not quite to that extent yet. You know, like you said, like we're not there yet, but we're getting there, and that's definitely in part because of Everett Golson. So we're just not there yet. We're
yeah,
getting there.
my dream with the quarterbacks is to be like Southern Cal was in the Pete Carroll heyday, where, you know, they had the opposite going on. It wasn't young QBs making this huge impact. When they were as deadly as they were in Pete Carroll's era, it was because they had seniors staying in the program, getting maybe 1 to 2 years at most as a
Hmm.
starting quarterback. And it was just Heisman contender after Heisman contender after Heisman contender. You had, you know, Palmer, you know, followed up by Leinart, I believe, followed Palmer, I think is the correct order. And I'm blanking on Sanchez followed Leinart, I believe is what it was. Hopefully, I got my order right. My brain's
It's
everywhere.
okay. We don't root for USC. I'm just kidding.
Right, but I mean that's kind of my dream situation is
Yeah.
to have that to where, you know, Golson finishes out. He I think it's very clear he needs one more year
Hmm.
within Notre Dame. So Golson gets another year to start, and then Zaire gets a couple years, and then Kaiser gets a couple years, and then
Hmm.
whoever follows, you know, you just keep that. When you can make that a machine, that's how you build a dynasty. You know,
Yep.
Alabama's seeing it right now. They had A.J. McCarron, and now Sims has come in, and Sims is picking right up where they left off. I honestly can't tell you off the top of my head. I may have just blown my own argument up, so who knows? It could be a redshirt freshman, and I just screwed up. But I mean, that's what I want is if you can
No,
cycle
yeah.
it where you have these experienced quarterbacks in. Heck, if Gunnar Kiel had stuck around a little bit, maybe it's we
I know.
go Golson for, you know, a year, Kiel for a year, and then Kaiser for a year, and you just have these studs that are just, you know, Notre Dame's all of a sudden quarterback you, just throwing out these
Hmm.
awesome quarterbacks back to back to back. So the good news is the talent is there, and so I hope
And
that's
so much of it's coming back if we're talking about the whole team too. So I think that'll be exciting for next
yeah.
year.
Zero seniors started on the defense this game.
Yeah,
We haven't
that's
even talked
cool.
about injuries. After all this, we haven't even talked about two huge injuries with Joe Schmidt being out. I guess we kind of referenced it with Niles, but Cody
Yeah,
Riggs going down before the game. You know, that those were huge, and the
yeah, they
defense
are.
still played well enough to win, which is absurd and a huge testament to Brian Van Gorder and the defense that he's put together, and, you know, Kelly finding the right talent for this squad, even though Brian Van Gorder wasn't in the plans until, you know, last offseason. So that is a positive, and that's another thing. If you want to take the step back into this big wide angle shot, it's that we had injuries coming in. You know, Collinsworth went down preseason. We had 5 players suspended before a game even
Mhm.
started, and now you had Schmidt go down. Gray still hasn't gotten healthy yet. Collinsworth
Right.
is still, you know, it's like he gets back in and he breaks. Unfortunately, he's just had a snake
Oh
bitten year.
no.
So I mean, there's so many things that have happened. It's almost a wonder. And Kelly's not going to get any kind of Coach of the Year awards for doing this, but it's a testament to the program he's put together. So, you know, that's also why I think I'm not totally mad, disappointed, yes, but if we do this now, I will say this: if we have this kind of performance against Louisville or, God forbid, Northwestern, and
Yeah.
possibly even Southern Cal, I'm probably going to be towing the edge a little bit more. Right now, I'm kind of on the park bench of the Grand Canyon, just sitting back, kind of looking from a distance. I'm going to
Yeah.
be walking towards that edge if this
Yeah, no,
repeats.
I agree. I'm tolerant as of now, but I don't want to see it again.
Right, because the way I see it is all those the 3 remaining games are very winnable.
Yes.
Northwestern especially, that they are not good, and we're not even going to really talk much about a preview. Here's all you need to know about Northwestern: was lost to them 10-9 because they went for two at the end of the game. Apparently on a play that Michigan was not fooled on, and the quarterback falls,
Fell
flat on
over.
his face. So
Yeah.
um, they are
Yeah,
not
I don't
good.
even want to go there. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
So Fitzgerald's a terrible coach. So, I mean, that's your apocalyptic situation. You will see us completely despondent on here if that happens. And,
I don't even know if I don't, do we have to do an episode if something like that happens? I don't even know what I'll have to say.
it may just be this long, because we try not to cuss too much on here. So maybe we'll just have to censor the whole thing because all we
Yeah.
got dropping
We have,
F-bombs and
I'd
everything
probably
else.
have like my half gallon of ice cream and a spoon and just, maybe I'd be crying. I don't even know where my emotions would be at that point.
Yeah,
But,
might have to be wearing sunglasses on because I'm still too drunk, flash hungover, and
right? Have the
even the
lights
dim light in
dim,
my office is too much to deal with this. But
talk quietly. Yeah. So hopefully, yeah, we're not even going to preview that because that should,
yeah, I mean that's the apocalyptic scenario. That's the one
yes,
where I'm saying, okay, everybody is like, follow me. I'm jumping off the cliff with you.
yes.
And like I said, to a lesser degree, Louisville, they're not a bad team. They're a
They're
pretty
not.
decent team. But I would still be more upset if we lost to Louisville because I don't think they're nearly as good as Arizona State. USC, as talented as they are, have been. You want to talk about an inconsistent team? It's right over there in Southern Cal. I don't even know what those guys. I don't know if it's a Sarkeesian thing. I don't know if it's just they need a little bit more time. If they gotten unlucky, after all, Arizona State did beat them on a Hail Mary, which was absurd, but also probably the worst defended Hail Mary of all time by USC. So I don't really have a handle on where they're at. I just know they have potential to be dangerous. But
Mhm.
if you gave me the schedule and I would say Florida State, Arizona State potential losses because they're pretty good. Arizona State's been better than I thought they would be this season.
Mhm.
And they have a very good chance to win the Pac-12, and I'm
Yeah.
hoping the Pac-12 is getting a little bit more respect. I mean, because Utah for a period of time took Oregon. They were going back and forth until Oregon just laid on the gas after
Right.
their receiver just made the idiot play of all time and dropped the ball behind him before the end zone. That changed their entire game. But Utah took Arizona State to overtime.
Yeah.
But the Pac-12 has been pretty good this season. I think the SEC West I think still the best division in football right now. It's very hard to argue
Mhm.
that. Although that the wonderful dream scenario is there to where a two-loss team could be playing for the SEC title game, which I'm kind of hoping for. Just now you're rooting for chaos. You don't even.
Exactly. Yeah, might as well.
Yeah, I guess that's what we should talk about now. That's a good segue because
Yeah.
playoffs gone. I mean, a lot of the apocalypse would basically have to happen in the top 15 or so in college football for us to sneak into the top four.
Yeah.
So where are you at as far as expectations for the rest of 2014 now that the playoffs are out of the picture?
One, I think I can breathe a little easier, to be honest. Because I think you are. I think now I'm just going to be, I don't know, kind of just watching to have fun. But I also do want, like you said, I want a good bowl game that's going to mean something if we win it, because I agree with what you said earlier. I think it will mean things for next year, but I still want this year to end on an exclamation point, and I want people to know before next year that Notre Dame is, I want us to beat someone because I know that that's still arguable. So that's what my expectations are. I don't know who that's going to be now because I'm kind of confused about where we're going to end up. I was actually surprised. Are we 16 right now?
15 and 16 in the.
I was actually kind of shocked by that, to be honest, which again kind of put me into a little bit of like, oh, but what if we would have won then? Because I honestly
Right,
didn't think
yeah.
we would be where we are now, and we could play the what if game a lot. But yeah, I was like, oh my gosh, they have us at 16 and 15. Like really, that seemed generous to me. So I don't know, but just a good bowl game is what I want against a good opponent.
Yeah, and the way the bowls are.
It's a good bowl game, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and one thing that the playoff committee has the power to put, it's kind of like a new form of the BCS.
Okay,
So
yeah,
in the BCS era, that would be, obviously your goal is to get to the title game, but if you land into a BCS bowl,
right.
you had a good season and you want to win that bowl. And the playoff era, it's very similar. We have, the semifinal bowls, but there's four more bowls beyond those two that
Hmm.
rotate. So you have this rotation, and I'm pretty sure I have the count right. It's six. I don't have
Hmm.
actually. You know what? Let me not just assume. I actually have it bookmarked. So let me, and I'm gonna make sure I get this up on HLS because this indie sports blogger who was our guest earlier last week was able to. It wasn't last week. It was 2 weeks ago, wasn't it? Man, my brain is
Yeah,
all.
I know. No, I know. It's like what?
This is what Notre Dame losses do. Okay, so
Yeah.
here's the situation. Aaron, who was our guest 2 weeks ago, put this up. This was done by Tim O'Connor and the Fighting Irish Digital Media Department. You may know him as Oak. So here's what it is that, and this year in particular, the Rose Bowl and the Sugar Bowl are your two semifinals, and then
Mhm.
there's a national championship game in my backyard out at Jerry World in Arlington.
Mhm.
Now, if Notre Dame is the highest ranked non-semifinal team of the SEC or Big Ten, so if ND is above them, they will go
Mhm.
to the Capital One Orange Bowl, which again,
Okay.
I know we're not used to thinking of the Capital One Bowl as a
Right.
big deal,
Being
but
like a big deal, but yeah.
it's one of the bigger bowls in the way. I mean, we have to reset. It's a new shuffle.
Exactly. You have to like wipe everything else that you've known up to this point.
Right. So now there's another one. If Notre Dame is not on that selection. So that's kind of Notre Dame's quote unquote BCS automatic bid if we're comparing it to the BCS era. So
Right. Okay.
if that does not happen, the College Football Playoff Committee can select Notre Dame as an at-large to the Cotton Bowl here in Texas, to the
Okay.
Fiesta Bowl, or to the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. So again, bowls, the Cotton Bowl and Peach are again some newcomers here to where you were not really used to that being.
Right. Being a big deal, but it is now.
I just realized I misread something. It's the Capital One Orange Bowl. I have the
Okay.
icon was small, so my bad. So I apologize for that. So it's the, and I was even like, it's like, wow, that things really did change. But yeah, it's the Orange Bowl where we have the agreement, and that I think is also attached to a 3-year deal with the ACC. So if we take that, basically we're taking the bid from the ACC team, I think, and then
Okay.
so there's other roles in there. So those are your, so there's 4 bowls that Notre Dame can land in, and all of these bowls. And one thing you'll hear a lot about the college football playoffs is that New Year's Eve and New Year's Day are coming back. The Orange Bowl is New Year's Eve. The Fiesta Bowl, New Year's Eve.
Okay.
Peach Bowl,
Yeah.
New Year's Eve. The Cotton Bowl is New Year's Day. Your 2 semifinals on New Year's Day. So, yeah, I know it's not the same as a playoff, but you're going to get really good matchups, and it is a very valid comparison right now, or argument rather, to say Notre Dame has not beaten anybody unless Stanford all of a sudden sneaks up into the top 25. You know, we still don't have that win, and I think it's very important for us to get that win. We
Yes,
need
I
a
agree.
win like that. You know,
Yes.
not
Please.
just it's not just to shut people up. You know, the peanut gallery.
No.
It's that this team needs that kind of a win.
They
You know,
do.
that's a big building block for next season, and really it's a great way to end this season. And this is not just looking back to next year. This is a very big deal because again,
Yes.
only 4 teams are going to have a shot at the playoff. It
Mhm.
was going to be, there was a path for us to do it. It would have still been hard to begin with.
Mhm.
So, you know, root for that to happen. I mean, if we end up in the top 10 and we get in one of those bowls, and like I
Yeah.
said, I really want an SEC team.
I know. I
It's
agree. That right now is my new goal, I think. That sounds like a good one.
well, because what you can do then is if you get an SEC team in there, you can say, you know, now Brian Kelly comes up to the podium and was like, well, Coach, how was this year? It's like, well, here's how our year was. We beat somebody in the Big Ten, we beat somebody in the ACC, we beat somebody in the Pac-12, and we beat somebody in the SEC. We're
Yeah.
only a Big 12 win away from beating everybody in the Power 5. I mean, that means something there.
It does. Yeah. No, I agree. I could live with that.
Yeah, and then going into next season, I mean, you have you know, a similar route. We're going to have Texas on the schedule, so
I
we're
was
going
gonna
to
say,
have
yeah.
you're going to have just about every single Power Five conference again represented on the schedule. So
Mhm.
you know, and that's why Kelly, you know, he was taking some shots in his presser before this game, you know, talking about the strength of schedule, but you know, he made it a soundbite and he didn't really politic too much. It was because should Notre Dame lose, that he doesn't have an argument, but you
Mhm.
know, you'll still hear him talk about, I'm sure, throughout the rest of the season to say how this year went in terms of winning against a tough week in and week out schedule. So
Mhm.
there's still a lot to play for this season.
Yeah,
I guess
definitely.
what we're
Yeah,
both
I mean,
kind of.
definitely is all is definitely not lost. So it's just like you said, it's not we had high hopes, which were totally valid at the time. It's just now you also have to just temper it with like all is not lost. Like yes, we're not going to the championship, but there's still a lot of exciting things that can happen. So that's what
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to.
and it's not just a consolation. And I think, now that I think about it, another part of that is just think about the bowl games that Notre Dame has been in. If you miss that mark, I mean, it was really BCS or bust, because until
Exactly.
this new agreement, I mean, we ended up in all kinds of, outside of the what was the whatever the Russell Athletic Bowl was called before previously. I'm forgetting
Champs.
off the top of my head. Yeah, champs.
Champs
Beyond
sports.
that, after we exhausted that bid, there was nothing, and that's how we ended
Yeah.
up in the Pinstripe
Bowl that
Bowl.
you never heard of in your life.
Yeah, and that's how we end up in the Pinstripe Bowl, and the Sun Bowl before that, just because there wasn't a spot. So I can
Right.
understand Notre Dame fans, and it is so confusing. Like, I don't know this off the top of my head. I had to pull up the infographic to take a look.
Yeah, I know.
Even
That's
pulling
why I
up,
was like, I'm a good bowl because I don't know where we can end up.
yeah,
But
and even pulling up the infographic, I freaking read a bowl wrong. So I mean, it's a new world. I don't think it's a playoffs or bust. We always should be in the discussion. We were definitely in there this season. So now
yeah,
let's shoot to be a top 10 team. We're not done yet. Let's
nope.
get to the top 10. Let's get into one of those kind of new era BCS bowls, and let's
Yeah.
have a big win that we can build on next year. If you think about it, last year Oklahoma, just look at all the respect they got for crushing Alabama in the,
Hmm.
I forget if it was the Cotton or Sugar Bowl. I can't remember off the top of my head, but they got so much respect the next season. I mean, they were the trendy pick to win the Big 12 and
Yeah.
possibly be a top 4 team. So, and those preseason things matter because it gets the eyeballs on you early. So, yeah, there's still a lot to play for. This isn't, I'm not trying to be, basically sugarcoat the loss. Again, I'm so upset about it. It's just that I know what the reality of the situation is now.
Right.
So I'm looking, it's like, okay, missed that mark. Let's hit the next one.
Yeah. So what's the other mark that we can hit? And now we know what it is. So I think it's valid to be excited about that.
And I will say this, just so this is not me continuously moving the goalposts. I will say this now, just to get it on the air, on record. If Notre Dame does miss that mark, I will be extremely disappointed in this season. I don't like using the term failure to describe a season. I think that's a little too harsh, but I will say that
Yeah.
you fell below my expectations for sure, for what this team is, for what our schedule was. We really should end up in the top 10. I think we should end up in one of those New Year's Eve, New Year's Day bowl games. If we're not a part of that conversation, then yeah, something went wrong, and that means we ended 9-3, probably because we shot ourselves in the foot again. So,
Yeah. So let's not have that happen.
yeah, because the way I see it, we lost to 2 really good teams.
We did. Yeah.
And I know people, the Florida State one, it still stings, but there were other ways we could have won that game beyond
Yeah.
having to rely on the last call. Arizona State, yes, we shot ourselves in the foot, but we still had a chance to come back until Corey tips a ball up in the air. We bumble a field goal. There's still so many different
I
plays.
know. Yep.
And yeah, you can play the what if game all day long. It will drive you nuts.
Exactly. So don't do that.
Yeah. So I mean, and really, that's one thing this Notre Dame team hasn't done in a long time. 2012, obviously we went undefeated and lost in the championship game, which was,
Mhm.
but in an embarrassing fashion. Really, that stink is still kind of on this team. We got to be
Yeah.
honest with that from the national perspective. But now, in 2013, we lost games to teams we had no business losing to. You can, even though we definitely could have won Florida State and Arizona State, they had business beating us. I mean, this is not
Exactly.
a possibility, and that's one thing, that is still under our belt. Pitt is the big one that sticks out from last year, the post Navy
Yes.
disaster. So this is, now that the post Navy disaster is Arizona State, a little bit easier to swallow. Doesn't make it any better per se, but a
No.
little bit easier to swallow. Like I said, though, you lose one of these next 3 games, and I'm throwing my hands up in the air like, geez, what went wrong? And then I am playing that what if going
Agreed.
crazy game until
Agreed.
2015 happens.
Yeah.
I don't
Yes,
know.
I'm with you. I say we need to win these next 3, starting with Northwestern. Is that who we have? I can't even.
Northwestern is next. Northwestern.
Northwestern's next. Yes, we talked about that. See, that's how much I care about previewing that. I'm like, who?
Right. Yeah, but because there's so much to talk about in this one. I guess, well, all said and done, this may be a little bit more difficult than usual, but we got to select MVPs before we go off the air.
I know. I was thinking about that. I was like, I don't even know. I mean, and that's not to say no one played well. It's just that like wasn't the first. That was my first thought of like what to do after the game. Was like, well, let's think who my MVP is because I was just I don't know.
No,
Not
I had that thought too. I was like, geez, who am I going to pick? So, do you want me to start or do you want to kick it off?
you can start.
Oh, hell. All right. Offense, I'm going to give it to Will Fuller. Just because he's still standing out to me as, he was the leading receiver in the game, but man, that guy, he is just such a weapon. And not just with the speed, he just has such great vision. I
Mhm.
thought maybe Folson would be in this role, but obviously we had to abort the run game a little bit sooner than probably we would have wanted to, and part of it had to do in this case with pass protection. So it wasn't just inefficiency on the ground. It's Everett's getting killed, and we need to put Cam McDaniel in there to make sure he doesn't die. So if you're looking at
Mhm.
one of our big weapons that stepped up in a big way. And the only reason I would not give this to Golson because he had a career high with passing yardage, but he never should have been in the situation to need to
Right.
throw for 446 yards.
Yes.
So, and I can't give an MVP to somebody, even though Arizona State did a great job. I cannot give it to him because of all the turnovers, because it's the reason why we lost. So I can't do that. Now defense, man, this one's much much harder. Um, Gosh. Oh man. Uh, I think I'm gonna keep Sheldon Day on. I think maybe that'll be my pick. No one actually. You know what? I take that back. Farley had some big plays towards the end when Notre Dame went on that big streak of being able to consistently stop. Farley was stepping up big, got a sack, made some good plays.
Mhm.
I'll go with him. The defensive line played a lot better in the second half, so that was usually Sheldon Day usually is always a standout there, but Farley he went from is he in this game to hello, there you are, you're making plays.
That's true. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I guess I'll give it
I
to
agree. That's a
that
good
one's,
pick.
and I know it's hard to pick it out, but it's just because Arizona State torched us so much in the game, and
I
we
know that's why I'm still like still thinking. Yeah, it's not like no one played well. It's just not where my mind was going. I think Farley is a good pick for defense for sure because I agree. They started calling his name and I was like, oh, Matthias, hey there, good
yeah.
one. Way to step up a week with you. And it's not like he's not a good player. I just thought he was super clutch in this game. I was like, yeah, I get it. Um, offense. Mm, Offense is tough. Will Fuller's a good one. I mean, oddly enough, I was really well, not oddly enough. I mean, I was going to say Cam McDaniel. I was impressed with. I know it's weird because I know our run game didn't really get too far, but I was kind of impressed with him. I'm always impressed with him. I just think he runs really well. But I don't know. It's tough.
Yeah, he had a good game. I mean,
He
we
did. I mean,
talked about it, but he did. And I know we had to abandon the run, but one thing we should consider is that Brian Kelly still felt good enough to where once we started getting close to the end zone, he was feeding Cam.
yeah. I mean, and yeah. So I think I'll stick with him just because I think he did what he needed to when he was called upon. So, and I really do think. Uh, I know Folston's your boy, and he's really good. But to me, Cam, I think too is another one. Like sometimes I don't forget about him, but I know that they haven't been giving him the ball as much in certain games. And when he does get it, and I'm like, why would you not feed it to Cam? His legs always keep moving. He's always fighting for yards. I'm really impressed with the way he plays. So
Yeah,
I'll
and
give
I,
it to him.
yeah, and I think he knew because his carries have been reduced because of how well Folson's been playing. He's like, I know
Hmm.
I'm in here because I'm supposed to block, and he did save Golson's hide. For the second half of the
Hmm.
game, and I really don't think it's a coincidence that Golson started playing better, and he finally got more time in the pocket. He wasn't having to.
Yeah, had some time to settle down a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, when he got the ball, he did well. He got a touchdown. So yeah, I think that's not a bad pick at all in the least.
There we go. Yeah, that was on the fly too because I hadn't really thought about it, but yeah.
But yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
sometimes Joe Schmidt just because I like him. I'm just kidding. Get well soon.
oh man, yeah, it's like see what happens when I mean. But if you think about it, yeah, not only is Joe Smith out, but then Jalen does not probably has one of his worst games of the season. You
I
know,
know. It's just, yeah.
Still had a bad game too. I mean, that
I
one.
would love to know like what was going on. Just like you said, I don't know if some of it was emotional or what, because Everett definitely was not himself for part of the game, and Jalen Smith, that's so uncharacteristic. And I mean, that guys, every game's different. You wake up feeling different every day, blah, blah, blah. But it just seems so weird. I don't
Yeah.
know.
And you're playing in 90 degrees, and you're on your
Yeah,
heels, and you're out there more than you should be. So,
yeah, definitely. I mean, the defense, poor things. I mean, crazy.
and again, we have
sit
to.
down probably.
Yeah, and we have to remember Arizona State has a very good offense. And I said, before was that
You
the
did.
key was going to be pressuring Kelly and throwing him off his game, and we did not
Mm-hmm.
do that. We could not stop the running attack. We could not get consistent pressure on Kelly. And,
Nope.
Strong made one of the most ridiculous touchdown catches I've seen all season long. We usually don't tip our hat to the opponent too much on this show, being Notre Dame homers, but that
For us, no.
yeah, that catch was ridiculous, and
It was.
this was like, I ain't even mad. What are you going to do to stop that?
Exactly. It's like, okay.
The only mad part was the commentary team pointing out, it's like, oh yeah, that was a pick play, and every Notre Dame fan's like, I swear to God, if I hear
I
that
know.
phrase one more time.
I know. It's like, la, 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 just lie to me. I don't want to hear it. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, yeah. Well, we survived. We've
We survived. We're good. We're good.
yeah. So I mean, there's still a lot to play for, and hopefully we pull it out, because I definitely want this to be the last sad show of the season.
I agree. Yeah, so 3 more to go. Northwestern up next. Let's start with them and win the rest. I think that was a rhyme or something. I don't know. I'm like Dr. Seuss up here.
We're getting limericks in at the tail end of this.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah. We'll end with that. Poetry.
Works for me. That sounds good.
Sounds good. Go Irish.
Go Irish.
Since we are